But that's only if you happen to have a good power. Not everybody does. Some people take it and just blow up.
I don't want to do this anymore, man.
Shut up. So the question is, what's your power? Might be good, might be bad. Nobody knows.
Take the pill, Tommy.
Take it. Go ahead. I want to see what happens.
Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin, I'm a film critic, and you're watching the Armchair Auteur. It's an ongoing video series where I review movies, look at old films, dissect screenplays. So if you're the kind of person that likes watching this sort of thing, please consider subscribing. Today we're going to do a review of the new Netflix movie Project Power, another one of the many reviews of Netflix original movies I have on the channel, because lately new movies aren't coming on movie theaters, and we have to rely on whatever Netflix's algorithm pushes towards us. Project Power is actually something of an anomaly within the Netflix original universe. As I talked about before on the channel, most Netflix movies tend to fall into one of two categories. They are either really prestige projects like The Irishman or Roma, where Netflix has taken a ton of money and just thrown it at some prestige filmmaker to buy themselves like some award clout. Or much more middling movies where they've thrown money at the project, but it definitely feels kind of like an overblown television film. And those are the sorts of movies that tend to give Netflix as a brand kind of a bad rap. But Project Power is a little bit different. So basic premise, Project Power is sort of a super-powered crime thriller in the sense that it is about a world like that is not different from our own, set in New Orleans, Louisiana, where there's a new drug on the streets called Power that if people take, gives them some kind of random superpower for like 5 minutes. And people get addicted to having these powers, obviously, so it starts spreading across the city. And the story then follows three primary leads. Jamie Foxx plays a guy named Art, who is like interrogating drug dealers who sell power, and he's trying to get to like the top of the supply chain, figure out who's in charge of all this stuff for his own personal like mysterious reasons. And then there's a character played by Dominique Fishback, who plays Robin, a teenage aspiring rapper who sells power on the side to take care of her ailing mother. Robin gets caught up in the mix of all this stuff because of her cousin. And there's a third major player played by Gordon-Levitt, who plays a police officer, a detective who is trying to like stop power from ravaging the streets, and in order to compete against the criminals that use this drug, he uses the drug himself. It's these primary characters, and they get caught up into the ongoing conspiracy around the drug and who's created it and how, and what it's doing to the city and what it's going to end up doing to the entire country and perhaps the world if it grows any larger. First, the good. Now, the reason I was saying the movie feels like an anomaly is that Project Power is a movie that cost $80 million to produce, and it actually looks and feels largely like an $80 million movie. By contrast, The Old Guard, a movie I actually quite enjoyed, is a movie that cost $70 million, but if you'd asked me what I thought the budget was, I would have said like 35 or 40, 45 tops, because the movie itself doesn't really feel like it maximizes that money, and it has, you know, that pervasive Netflix feel of cheapness, that these movies all feel like they were made too fast, a little cut corners, and they always have like you can't avoid it. Something about a lot of these Netflix original movies just looks like not quite right. Project Power, on the other hand, actually feels kind of like a pretty big budget summer movie. I mean, maybe if it was in theaters, it wouldn't be big enough to actually be considered like a competitor for like a Marvel or DC movie or something of that nature, but for the most part, like, it actually feels like legit. A lot of that is the responsibility of the filmmakers, Ariel Schulman and Henry Joost, who have directed a couple of Paranormal Activity movies. I'm not a big fan of those or them. But I will give the guys credit for making the movie have more of a colorful like palette, for taking more chances and having like a more dynamic look to things. I mean, it's definitely a bit try-hard. They do come across sort of as like a generic brand version of like Neville Dean Taylor, you know what I mean? But I'm not going to deny that they've made a movie that actually does have a lot more energy and excitement in its approach to superpowered movies than most of the last Marvel movies have, or even some of the DC films. It also helps they have like kind of big name stars like Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the movie, and the fact that like Dominique Fishback is like so good. Like, if you maybe seen like on The Deuce before, but she's sort of a newcomer and she's actually really incredible and holds the whole movie together. Really, really delightful character. And also, it's a movie that's set in New Orleans that they actually shot like in Louisiana, and it does have like a sort of a colorful vibe. I mean, as my friend Brian said after having watched the movie, there are parts of the movie that do feel like they're just redressing the same warehouses over and over again. Like, so there is some of that trusty Netflix cost-cutting vibe there, definitely. But for the most part, like, the special effects work, the actual action sequences are pretty thrilling, the way the effects capture people's different superpowers and stuff, it's pretty good. Like, I'm not gonna front. It also helps me personally that right before I watched Project Power, I had just watched another movie that I'll review next week, that is also set in New Orleans, that did not feel like it was in New Orleans whatsoever. It was actually sort of really distracting. So like, the minute Project Power came on and I felt like it was really shot more on location, I was like, oh, this is pleasant, this is nice. Really, the approach to the genre here is really fun too. It kind of reminds me of a comic book called Powers, created by Brian Michael Bendis and Michael A. von Oeming, and it really does just sort of hit the ground running that this is a realistic world that now superpowers are existing in, but we're not gonna like get into the mix of like the physiology of superpowers and like the origin, all this stuff. Like it really just is like people are getting powers from this drug now, and it just starts showing people with different powers. It doesn't explain all the like sci-fi mumbo jumbo and shit. It's just like, look, you're watching a movie called Project Power. Jamie Foxx is holding a superpowered like pill in the fucking poster. Just run with it. And I really, really appreciated that. All that said, however, this is sort of like a very basic movie. Like, I enjoyed it and I liked it, and it was a surprise that it was somewhat better than many other Netflix originals I have sat through. Not randomly casting Noah Centineo in the movie does not take away from the fact that this is sort of like a random basic, you know, genre exercise. Like, it's nice, but it really doesn't do as much with the genre as like it theoretically could. Now, if this movie was like 20 minutes shorter, I probably wouldn't make any kind of criticism in this realm, but it is a 2-hour movie, and I feel like at 2 hours, you're bloating into that more like dramatic runtime where you should have room within the story to actually like explore the themes further. Like, there's obviously some like subtext here about like marginalized people being used as like fodder and pseudo referencing like the Tuskegee experiments and things of that nature, but beyond kind of gesturing like off camera to some sort of social commentary, like it doesn't really feel like it's there. Like I said, if this was like a shorter, tighter movie, I wouldn't even point that out. I would just go, okay, cool, this is like a fun sprint. But like, there's room in the movie. Some of it, there's room where they could have gone further. For instance, there's specifically a scene where Dominique Fishback's character Robin is talking about how, you know, like she sells drugs to take care of her mother, you know what I mean? And Jamie Foxx's character Art is like, well, there's other things you could do. You could join the military. And like his character's entire thing is that joining the military is the reason he's in all this bullshit, and that like the systems leave marginalized people so little room to succeed that like selling drugs and joining the armed forces are two of their only choices. But the character doesn't seem to reflect on that whatsoever. He just sort of offers it to her like it's real advice in the middle of the movie. And I just felt like at the runtime the movie had, there's room to unpack that. There's room to go a little bit deeper than the surface with some of these ideas. But again, I guess that's not really the direction this project was ever meant to go into. It's definitely meant to be like a fun diversion. It's definitely meant to fulfill some of the needs of the Netflix algorithm for people that want to watch new superhero content but haven't got an MCU movie this year. But I really do have to applaud it for being more fun and like more genuinely like experimental in some ways than certain other superhero genre movies that we're very used to. Like, I have to give it credit for that. I cannot complain all the time in my other videos about how boring I think the Marvel movies have gotten, and then shit on this movie for at least attempting to make things a little bit more dynamic and fun. So my final verdict is I think it's pretty good. Like, the movie loses a bit of steam as it goes along, and I think the script could have been more efficiently chopped up a bit to give more balance between the lead characters. I definitely think that the movie makes you feel like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's going to be a bigger deal in the plot than he really is, and at times he feels a little bit like underused, and I feel like both him and Jamie Foxx's characters could have been a little bit more fleshed out, but I mean, you know, we're in nitpick territory with that. What it boils down to for me, and why I feel like I have to recommend this movie, is that like it actually tugs on like a very specific thing that I personally like about superpowered stories, and that is the fact that both of the main like male adult characters all seem to be sort of trapped within their regressive viewpoints of the way the world works. And even though the world has changed and like superpowers exist now and all this stuff is crazy, these two guys are still attacking their respective problems, sort of like people that are stuck in their ways. They're trapped in this specific kind of thinking, and it takes this younger character who's a little more imaginative, a little bit more hopeful, and like a little bit more like crafty to actually bring them together in a way where they can actually like save the day, so to speak. And that's like a very like comic book thing to me, you know. Like, I like that when comics can be kind of designed for the youth, and people always look at it like as the bad thing, like, oh, comics for teens are stupid and dumb, and it's like, no, comics are like delightful. It's why I think a lot of more mature adult takes on superpowered stories are always uninteresting, because it's like, well, if superpowers were real, everything would be gritty and fucked up, and it's like, well, everything's gritty and fucked up now. Like, I don't always need that, you know. So like that little kernel in this movie, and especially with just how much like vitality Fishback has and how much like heart she brings to the movie, that really put it over the top. To me, that actually outweighed any other like nitpicking complaints that I had. It's like a fun movie. Like, let's just have some fun sometimes. Thank you guys for watching. Those are my feelings about Project Power on Netflix. You can watch it on Netflix, obviously. If you're interested in more thoughts I have about comic books and things of that nature, the good folks over at Mature Listeners, one of my favorite podcasts about all the great Vertigo comics from the late 80s and early 90s, have a new episode out about Grant Morrison's run on Doom Patrol, where I am a guest. It's like a fun thing. We talk about Doom Patrol, obviously, but we also kind of get into some diversions about like wrestling and other comics things. And we talk about ice cream a lot. If you guys like ice cream is great. I like ice cream. So I'll put a link in that in the description. It's a really fun episode. I had a lot of fun recording it. And yeah, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. I do this like every week. There's tons of more stuff like this. If you are subscribed, please make sure you hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new content. And yeah, if you have any thoughts about Project Power, or you want to like roast Jamie Foxx or something in the comments, please do that. Always appreciate that. And yeah, hope you guys are staying safe. Have a great day. Bye.